today, thank you all very much for coming in spite of the rain. This place holds a very special place in my heart because over 50 years ago, on this very same spot, I recited a poem to the Virgin of Lanabal entitled Gabi ng mga bulaklak, Night of the Roses. And today, it feels like a homecoming to me. And this time, I'm back to pay homage to one of Mama Mary's favorite sons, St. Dominic de Guzman, founder of the Order of Preachers. Looking back, I'm so thankful to the Dominican fathers for giving us the gift of education, which has been the foundation of all my writings. And so, thanks for the gift of philosophy, for the gift of theology, for the gift of Summa Theologica of St. Thomas, because these are the three rivers, the three watering holes, which molded and shaped our minds. There's only one thing I learned in college, and that is the power of asking the right questions. I learned this from Father Antonio Gonzalez, because 50% of the answer is already contained in the question, if the question is framed right. And so, the foundation of all my writing is based on this. Did I ask the right question? Did I separate what is essential from the non-essential? And so today, I'd like to offer St. Dominic three things. The first one is a trilogy of books, Buhay ni Santo Domingo in 2021, followed by Veritas, the Selling of Untruth in Social Media, 2022, and this year, St. Dominic, a Saint for Impossible Causes. While researching the life of St. Dominic, I tried to scour the internet and buy all the books I could lay my hands on in Amazon.com. But there's one problem that I encountered, and that is most of the books I read are heavy reading. They're very scholarly, especially those of Piquer and Mandunet. So after reading a few pages, I find myself dozing off. And so the very first thing I did in writing this book is I make it short. I chopped off all the chapters into small pieces so that it'll be easy to read. Second, the pacing is fast, so that anything that will hinder or impede the flow of the story, I put that story and put that in the back of the book, in the appendix, so that the readers who had time later on could read that at their own leisure. The third one is, it is complete. Everything you need to know about St. Dominic is here, including his miracles. And the fourth one is, it is current and relevant. Because although the story of St. Dominic happened in the 13th century, I wrote this book in the golden years of my life. I wrote this book in a stage of my life where I am about to sum up everything that I learned in life, its hopes and dreams, its heartaches and betrayals, its triumphs and defeats. And so, this book is not just a story about St. Dominic, but a story about And so I ask this question of authenticity, because most of us lead double lives. We hold the truth side by side with the lies and masks we wear. We would like to project a perfect image of ourselves to the world, but as a matter of fact, that's not who we are. And so the question of authenticity. We would like to save our souls, but when do we know if we are truly converted? And what do we do in the middle of a crisis when we are pinned to the ground? We cannot move, we cannot breathe, and there's no exit. What do we do? And then the fourth one is it should be memorable. And in order to be memorable, this is the time I use poetry. Because 99.9 of all preaching today is done in prose, not in poetry. And so I ask the question, is there a place for poetry in a homily? And the resounding answer is yes. But first, let us discuss the difference between prose and poetry. Prose, in general, is made up of a block of words, whereas poetry is lean and mean. Poetry is brief, it is condensed, not because it would like to stress brevity for brevity's sake, but it would like to stress impact, where less is more. Poetry taps into the soul, whereas prose taps into the intellect. Poetry can name the unnameable. Poetry can see the big in the small. That's why William Blake says, to see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. If you would like to study the immensity of the world, all you need to do is look at a tiny grain of sand, because the big and the small are one. And so that's the type of the poet, looking at the heart of things. That's why poetry is memorable. Now, we would like the story of St. Dominic to be known throughout the world. And so today, this book is already translated into 5 languages. We have this in Tagalog, in English, in Portuguese, in Italian, and in Spanish. So if you know somebody who can translate this in some other languages, please contact me. We cannot pay the translator, but we will acknowledge him or her as the translator and publish this in Amazon.com. The second gift that I'd like to offer St. Dominic is the gift of a novel. A novel about his life as prelude to a movie. Because after 800 years, nobody has written a novel about St. Dominic. And perhaps I could understand why. Because writing a novel is very difficult. Because you have to balance historical accuracy with fiction. You have to master dialogue. You have to master description of settings. You have to master characterization of characters that has to come alive. And so, no movie director has taken it up yet. Unlike the story of St. Francis, which is good for film. That's why Franco Zeffirelli took it and made it into Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. Because let's face it, biography of St. Dominic is not a good material for film. So what I'd like to do is write a novel about the life of St. Dominic, a screenplay or a movie, so that later on, perhaps after 3 years, I could finish this. Now the third gift that I'd like to offer St. Dominic is concerned with time and continuity. Several years ago, Father Deng, Father Pilimon de la Cruz, the President Provincial of the Philippine Dominican Province, we were discussing, building, forming a Catholic Guild of Writers. And we will make Cafe in Gold our meeting place. And so today, I'd like to honor that commitment. I'd like to form a group of 10 of young people taken from the institutions that nurtured me. These young men will come from Immaculate Conception Minor Seminary in Biginigo, Our Lady of Guadalupe, USD Central Seminary, and here the student faith of Sto Domingo. They don't have to pay me anything. All they have to do is choose a Dominican saint. This could be St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Martin de Porres, St. Catherine of Siena, St. Rose of Lima. But in the next 3 years, I'm going to teach them poetry. Because truth be told, you are only as good as your theory of composition. That's very, very elemental. And I'll teach them the classics. I'll teach them Greek tragedies. I'll teach them Shakespeare, Khalil Gibran, Rabindranath Tagore, Rumi, the Persian poet, T.S. Eliot, and even the Filipino poet Rolando Carbonell. So that 3 years later, these young people would have published a book under their belt. And 3 years later, the Philly will not only have one novel about the life of St. Dominic, but 10 new biographies of Dominican saints. So that long after I'm gone, there will be a group of writers to continue my work. This will be my legacy. And now we come to the climax of my talk, which is the most important one. In all humility, I believe that this book will be a great help in helping preachers preach better. This book is a great equalizer. It levels the playing ground. Because even if you are just a starting or struggling writer, if you study this, you can compete with the competition and catch up, with the great writers and preachers of our time. And the reason is because poetry, only poetry can speak to the soul that no amount of words of prose can do. And so if you're a politician, a blogger, a YouTuber, a preacher, whether Dominican, Franciscan, Jesuit, diocesan priest, whether you are a sister preaching in Facebook or a simple lay minister struggling to write, study this book. Because this book shows how one can use poetry to elevate one's homily. This book is not just a biography. This book is one long homily, one long sermon where you can use poetry in a homily. For example, there's a portion in the Bible where people find it difficult to see Christ in the crowd. And so they ask, Lord, when did we see you hungry and gave you something to eat? Lord, when did we see you thirsty and gave you something to drink? And so the metaphor is Jesus is like the wind. And so in Tagalog, this is how you do it in poetry. Si Kristo ay tulad ng hangin. Mahirap makita, mahirap masabi. Naglalakbay siya sa bundok ng payatas. Naghahatid ng lunas sa pusong Yesu. So that's just a simple sample of how poetry can be used in a comedy. And so if you would like to elevate your preaching into the next level, if you would like to elevate your writing into the next level, make no mistake about it, that next level is poetry. For where would our world be without poetry? Where would the Bible be without the poetry of the book of Psalms, the book of Proverbs, the book of Lamentation, the book of Ecclesiastes, which shouts to the world that there is a season and time for everything under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. In fact, where would our civilization be without poetry? And if poetry is so important to our world, to our heritage, to our civilization, then why are we not teaching poetry in our seminaries and convents? I suggest that we hire national artists, national poets that will teach our choristas how to write poetry. Because if O.A. Di Malanta, the great O.A. Di Malanta, a former USD professor and a noted poet, could have taught us poetry during our seminary days here in Sto Domingo, if O.A. Di Malanta has taken us under her wings, then I'm sure there will be a lot more Dominican poets and writers. Wouldn't you agree? But wait, there is more. I saved the very best for last. We all know that every night, including my wife, millions of Filipinos all over the world are watching this blockbuster teleserye. FBJ's Batang Quiapo. And the good news is, after a lot of a series of discussions and meetings, I was able to convince Popo Martin, the director of Batang Quiapo, to direct the movie Alam Buhay ni Sto Domingo. Isn't that something? Joke only. Joke only. Ano mangyayari? Tignan mo si Popo Martin. Well, but Saint Dominic is the saint for impossible causes, right? Malay natin, baka maging interesado si Popo Martin. Well, in closing, let me quote from the book. So this is the last portion of the book when Dominic was dying and his brethren was singing the passing of a soul. And I quote, "The spider has finally spun its web." There goes the humble story of Brother Dominic, the preacher. A life force in the valleys of Caleruega, rode in the hills of Salamanca, lingered in the sanctuary of Osman, thundered in the bloody wars of Languedoc, and died in a humble cell with a beat-up, patched-up robe. And that's how Dominic is remembered by the simple people he touched. A saint who tilted the giant windmills of his time against all odds. A saint who dared to dream the impossible dream, a saint for impossible causes. And so we close with the soft, dying lyrics of Man from La Mancha, specifically cut for the wounded but glorious character of Saint Dominic. And the world will be better for this, that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable